Let's get more on this now with Liang, who is Chair Professor of Economics at Willamette University in Portland, Oregon. Thank you so much for joining us, Professor. So I'm going to ask you a little bit about the G20 summit that's coming up in Brazil soon. But first, can we just have a look back to the APEC gathering that's just wrapped up in Peru? What were your key takeaways from this year's event?
Yeah, good to talk to you, Paul. So in terms of the takeaways, I have major three takeaways. One is that when you look at the leaders' declaration, what you see is a reiteration of the consensus of, multilateral cooperation and open regionalism. So I think the leaders are really reaching the agreement that they wanted to promote trade and investment, digital transformation of the economy, formalization of the economy, and also just to build more synergies between countries when it comes to cooperation in, for example, sustainable development and so on and so forth. So I think that's a very loud and strong message to the rest of the world that the Asian Pacific economies are going to work together toward these common goals. The second takeaway, of course, is the mega port jointly built by Peru and China, the Chancay port in Peru, that is labeled as, the gateway to Asia that promises to transform trade and economic development. So I think that is a substantive step towards regional integration. And finally, I think a lot of meetings on the sideline, your reporters talk about the meeting between Xi and Biden. I think this is fruitful dialogues and discussions that would help to really clarify each other's stance going forward, which is very important in this coming, more unpredictable global environment.
Indeed, thank you. Well, that's a great summary for us. As we look ahead now to the G20 summit, what economic policies do you see taking precedence on the agenda, considering where we are at with the new incoming administration in Washington? And how do you see China's role evolving within the bloc?
Right, that's a great question. I think it's clear, as your reporter pointed out, the three major themes at this G20 are global alliance against hunger and poverty, and also climate change, especially global alliance of mobilization for against climate change. And last, there's also a lot of discussions that are about reform of the global governance system. And I think China will play a very important role in all three different areas, right? China lifted 800 million people out of poverty in the past 4 decades. There's a lot on China's part to share with the rest of the world in terms of poverty eradication. And second, when it comes to climate change, China has invested $890 billion in its own green economy at home, and another $100 billion in international clean energy investment projects since 2023. And China has installed more renewable energies in the world than the rest of the world combined just last year. And so China has the finance and the technology to help to promote that sustainable development going forward. And last, I think China also really resonates with this idea of reform of the global governance structure. China accounts for 18% of the world GDP, but only has 6% of the IMF voting share. And so I think it makes a lot of sense for the G20 to discuss all these very important issues because that really is the way that countries can move forward during this poly crisis.
Well, really great to get your insights into these really important meetings. That's Liang, Chair Professor of Economics at Willamette University. Thanks so much.